You know, really, I don't even know why we're talking about this.
Did you ever figure out how many acres that site entailed?
Which one?
How much, the red gym?
Well, by the country club. No, I didn't. You know, Eric?
What's that?
How many acres? You know, way out east. Recreational area?
The new BLM piece?
Yeah.
If I had my phone, I could tell you. I don't know it offhand.
Well,
Somebody said it was a section.
I don't think it's. I mean, it's the shape of it's not square.
Yeah, I knew that.
But yeah, I don't know if it's.
You follow the river kind of down.
It does. Yeah, it kind of makes kind of a weird. Yeah. But anyways, I don't know exactly what the area is. I don't know.
I kind of wonder what the agency in there might be. It entails the river, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, it goes all the way up around the bend.
There's the bend around.
Yep, all the way up to where like
Johnson's
just
house
below
is up on the hill.
yeah, below there's a big island up there. It's kind of below the new
There
bridge.
used to be a bunch of mining pits in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Up on the riverbank up there?
Yeah.
Or on the hillside.
Yeah, I think Holroyd used to haul out of there for his batch plant.
you know, they,
Concrete.
I don't remember have there been gravel pits there?
Yeah, there was gravel pits.
Was there? Huh. On the Robertson Road side?
whatever it is, it's.
Yeah, it was on the south side of the river, on, I call it the northwest side of the river, yeah.
Yeah.
There was some holes in there.
Huh, okay. I guess I didn't realize this.
That's been a long time ago.
Okay, by the clock that I'm looking at, I see it's 6 o'clock, and I will call the May 16, 2019 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. I'd remind commissioners to please turn your mic on and speak clearly into them when you do speak. I'd remind anybody in the audience that any of the conditions of the Planning and Zoning Commission or policies and statements and the agenda are available on the table outside if you haven't already picked one up. If you do have a cell phone, if you could please turn it off or put it on mute, it would be appreciated. I would note for the record we have 6 out of 7 commissioners present tonight. Commissioner Hine is not here. We have with our city staff, we have Craig Collins and Dee Hardy with the Planning and Zoning Department. We have our city attorney's office representative, Wallace Trembeth. And in the audience, we have our city council liaison, Councilman Hopkins. Thank you for coming. Start off with, I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the April 18, 2019 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Wingeter. Is there any corrections or additions? Hearing none, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Okay, we have 4 issues on the docket, 4 applications on the docket today for hearings. Starting off with PLN 19-7S. I would note this issue is tabled, and before we move ahead with it, I would entertain a motion to take it off the table.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wingeter, second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Feth. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
Well, most of us. Oh, there we go. Fred and Sue.
Oh.
There we go.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Okay, with PLN 7S off the table and eligible for consideration, PLN 19-7S is a consideration of a wireless communication facility to replace an existing 70-foot football stadium light pole with an 88-foot dual-purpose monopole located at 930 South Elm Street. The applicant being Natrona County School District Number 1 and Verizon Wireless. Now, let's see. Do we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In March of 2018, the City Council adopted ordinance number 2-18, which repealed the city's previous tower regulations and established a more comprehensive set of regulations for wireless communication facilities. Now, when wireless communication facilities are proposed, the city enlists the assistance of a third-party consultant to assist with the technical portions of the review that staff is not proficient in. In this case, Verizon Wireless has applied to replace an existing 70-foot light pole at the NCHS football field and track with an 88-foot high tower that will consist of both an antenna array and field lights. The MCHS campus is zoned ED, Educational District, and the proposed wireless facility is located generally at the north end of the campus between the football field and the track. The application has already undergone the third-party technical review and has obtained preliminary approval pending the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission on the site plan. As stated in the code compliance section of your staff reports, section 1712-124F of the municipal code provides the physical and design standards by which wireless facilities are reviewed. A summary of those applicable design and siting standards is provided in your staff report. It's staff's recommendation that the Planning Commission review the site plan, considering each of the listed requirements, and make a finding of compliance for each, or in the alternative, a condition of approval that would ensure compliance with the city's requirements. Staff has not received any public comments on this case, and staff has not included any recommended conditions of approval. Mr. Chairman, I have six exhibits to enter. A is the site plan application, B, vicinity map, C, site plan, D, public notice, E, notice of public hearing sent to property owners within 300 feet, and F, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That concludes staff's report, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, and exhibits A through F are accepted for the record. Are there any questions of staff before opening it up for discussion of the application with the applicant and others interested parties?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Wingeter.
I might have a question for the planner. Craig, I understand these cell phone towers are under the regulation of the FCC, so there's really no way we can turn it down? Is that, what's our authority on this thing?
Good question, Mr. Chairman, and we're happy to address that. I'll let Wallace, since that's more of a legal question.
I mean, not that we're going to turn it down, but I was just wondering why,
Mr. Chairman and members of the Commissioner, it's a fairly complex question. There are things that you can consider and things that you can't. For instance, you cannot turn it down based on radiation or frequency. The FCC has exclusive jurisdiction over that particular area, and so if it was a neighbor or someone complaining that they thought there might be too much radiation, the radiation levels are controlled by the FCC and set by that standard. You are allowed to look at the factors that are in your staff report to see if it complies with those regulations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? I now declare the public hearing open for consideration of case PLN 197S. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with the state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and other applicable laws. I would ask those individuals who address the commission to approach the lectern, identify yourself, and state your address. Would the person or persons representing the case PLN 197S please come forward and explain the application?
Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'll have to get out my really loud teacher voice. I'm Julie Peabody. I work for a company called Digital Skylines on behalf of Verizon Wireless. We are proposing to do what we call a football field light replacement pole at the Natrona High School. If you can. There's an increasing demand for wireless services. In 2016, data traffic reached a record high. We don't have any updated since 2016, but I'm sure it's a record high again and again and again. It just keeps expanding. In all that year, traffic totaled 13.72 trillion megabytes, the equivalent of 1.58 million years of streaming HD video. That's because everyone's watching things online. An increase of 4.0 trillion megabytes, 142% over 2015. Although we don't have the exact data for 2017 or 2018 at this time, I am assuming that it has increased significantly from there. In general, teens have increased smartphone, TV, video viewing 85% in the 4 years, and teen usage of cellular data for smartphone video has grown 127% in 15 months. In the year 2021, video will account for around 70% of mobile data traffic. So it is not just voice that we're talking about anymore. A lot of it is data. Over half, 52% of American households only have mobile voice connection. They no longer have a landline. For millennials, the number increases to over 2/3 who live in mobile-only households. They simply are not ever getting a landline any longer. That number is up from 10.5% in 2006 and 31.6% in 2011. 76% of 911 calls originate from a cell phone. It's a safety issue. Connected devices could create $305 billion in annual savings for the healthcare industry, and more than 75% of prospective homebuyers prefer strong cellular connections. So as Craig and I were discussing before, it used to be that people would look at a cell tower and it would be a detriment. It is no longer that way because everybody wants strong cell connections in their homes. By 2020, more than 34 billion internet-connected devices will be installed globally. That's more than 4 devices for every human on Earth. With ever-increasing demand from citizens, businesses, emergency service providers, and tourists from wireless facilities already in place, those facilities are becoming saturated. The problem is similar to trying to shove thousands of people through a regular-sized door all at once. The solutions are clearly you can build wider doors or you can add more doors. Building wider doors would be existing site modification, and adding more doors is new sites. This site is the equivalent of opening 2 extra doors. Traffic increase without adding capacity will cause marginally covered areas such as parts of Casper to degrade without a solution. Proximity to traffic plays a key role in making the solution as effective as possible. The high school is an ideal location for many reasons, one of which is the teens that are there. They're the ones using the data, and proximity makes it that much more effective because once it goes into the cell tower, it eventually becomes a wired communication, so it's not necessarily airborne any longer. So, the next thing. Next. So the existing sites in the vicinity in Casper have been widened as much as possible through adding additional spectrum and replacing antennas with better performing modern versions. Again, the proposed site is equivalent of opening a second and third door where we already have one to offload the congestive traffic. Next. Here's which it's really small and I apologize, this is what the RF engineer gives me. And making it bigger just makes it blurrier. The very red areas are the very congested traffic areas. So you can see where the little yellow tiny box is with the arrow pointing to the new site. That is why we are proposing to put a cell tower in that area. Currently, the existing cell towers up to the north are the ones providing the service for that area. Since nobody can read those small numbers, we're going to move on. In 2016, we actually identified the need for improved capacity, and we've been working in trying to find locations since then. We evaluated many different locations based on your zoning and landlord willingness and what will work for Verizon. The only location within our current search area with a willing landlord and the zoning zoning that was allowed was Natrona High School. In cooperation with the school, an agreement was reached to locate a light pole on the east side of the football field between the football field and the tracker/soccer field. So that's where we're proposing that one. Next. Here's the zoning map, which I'm sure all of you have seen before. If you can see in the red area and the area just to the west, the old Yellowstone district, basically the zoning precludes any towers in the old Yellowstone district. The orange and yellow areas around the little tiny purple area, which is the high school, which is in kind of the middle left there. I can't really point to it, but the purple area is the educational zone. That's all the high school. Surrounding it is residential, and no one likes a cell tower in a residential area. Mainly the parcels are too small to cover that. No one wants it in their direct backyard. Next. So in order to be considered, sites have to meet 3 primary criteria. Clearly the zoning code has to allow for it. Landlord of property has to be willing to lease the property for the wireless facility, and the allowable structure height has to meet our coverage requirements. The higher we go, the bigger umbrella that we cast, the more area we can cover. There's very much a line of sight. The more that direct the line of sight, the better the strength and capacity. Mainly in this area, we look at mature tree and building heights, and we have found that going on the football field light will get us just above most of that. Secondary considerations include proximity to traffic, distribution of traffic between sectors, which is how they define the antenna coverage areas, and distance to major population concentration. Okay, so the visual impact is usually what everyone is significantly worried about. Verizon proposed a football field light replacement pole to mitigate as much as possible the visual impact of the new communication facility. Per Casper zoning ordinance, stealth design means technology that minimizes the visual impact of wireless communication facilities by camouflaging, disguising, screening, or blending into the surrounding environment. Examples of stealth design include but are not limited to facilities disguised as trees, which we call mountain pines, flag poles, utility and light poles, bell tower, clock towers, ball field lights, and architecturally screened roof-mounted antennas. The new site will be located near other football field lights, provide opportunity for additional carriers to mount antennas. We did not go higher to allow additional antennas above or below us because there are 4 at least additional antenna sites for the field pole lights. And I talked to the school, and there's in the application they have a written notification that they would allow additional carriers to go on the other poles if need be. The fencing will obscure the ground equipment, and as requested, the equipment shelter will be built of brick to match the architecture of the school. We're just, the football field brick is ever so slightly, and when I say ever so slightly, I mean slightly different than the brick of the actual school. And so the school's trying to decide which brick they want us to match to, but we will match to one of those 2. Next. So there is the photo simulation of what it will look like. Clearly, it's a simulation. On the left, you can see that the antennas are located above the field lights. There will be new field lights on those poles. They won't be putting the old ones back on. So those will be new lights. And on the right, on the very right-hand side, the brick building is where the equipment will be housed. So we will be removing one dead tree. And that's what it was proposed to look like. And thank you, that's it. Are there any questions?
Questions from the commissioner for Ms. Peabody?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Commissioner Fett.
Sometime back, a year or 2 ago, we had a proposal for a cell tower by Mike Cedar Park. I believe that was the one that was tabled, if I'm not correct on that.
I was not involved in that at all, so I have no information.
What I'm wondering is, does this replace that?
No, it's in addition to.
It's an addition? Oh, okay, thank you.
I have no idea what, I'm not even sure that was a Verizon.
I would follow up on that with a similar question. A couple of years ago, we looked at a similar application, and it was approved for a tower out at our other high school. Were you at all familiar with that one?
Kelly Walsh.
Kelly Walsh?
That is a Verizon tower. I personally was not involved with that one, but yes, it is the same.
It's similar to that in terms of its usage and functionality. Other-
Mr. Chairman?
Keep things equal between the.
Commissioner Ronnie?
Can you explain the benefit to the school district?
Yes. That's an odd question. I assume that the lease will become public since it's school district. Normally, I don't discuss terms of a lease, but the benefit to the school district is that they will continue to own the tower. So once we install the antennas on it, the tower actually then becomes property of the school district. It cannot be sold to anybody else, for example, American Tower or Crown Castle or anything like that. They will receive rent payments, and there's upfront compensation that allows for them to replace all of the lights on the existing football field with new and upgraded lights.
Thanks for that. Is there a benefit or detriment outside of the obvious supplying the kids with better service for having this in a educational?
We put many cell towers at educational sites, in high schools, a lot on football fields, honestly. It is a proximity issue. The closer you are to a cell tower, the better your service is. So if they are using their devices, whether it be an iPad or a tablet of any sort, or their cell phone in the classroom for whatever purpose, it will improve their service there.
Okay. But it'll also take some space out of they're sacrificing some of their space on the field for the facility. Is that correct?
The actual tower will not, the cell tower itself will not take up significant land space. The equipment space is what I think that you are thinking of, and that is off of the field in an existing unused area.
So I see kind of the layout, and what's the driveway look like? And where is the facilities for, obviously for utility access to get to these locations? Is this whole thing gravelled all the way into the tower?
No. It will be replaced with lawn as it is. You won't be able, the easement won't be visible. You know, we'll replace the lawn, everything will go back how it is. The equipment area will be gravelled. And once they trench and put the fiber to the actual tower, then they will replace it with like the existing lawn or, new lawn or whatever.
Okay. So the gate to access this, there will be a driveway. One of the concerns I have is that the sidewalk and that right of way for the people to use is pretty, it's disrespected. And so I guess one of my fears would be utility workers parking on that sidewalk and forcing kids to walk out into Collins Drive to walk through. So that's one of my major issues is making sure that we're not using the sidewalk and the parkways as a service location for.
Right. So the site will be visited approximately once a month just to maintain it. So there's not a lot of parking. During construction, I would assume that they will have to block off part of that. Construction will hopefully happen during non-school time. We normally do construction at school sites during school. So ideally, it would be done over the summer if we could get that going, or the following summer.
So will they be entering the gate and parking on their once-a-month visits, or are they going to be parking in the sidewalk?
They'll be parking on the street, if there's street parking there, or they'll be parking one truck somewhere else, but not on the, in general. They won't park illegally,
Okay.
hopefully, or you should ticket them. But yeah, okay, yeah. I can't speak to, as, you know, where someone's gonna park, but I would assume not illegally.
Well, that happens often, and, you know, addressing those issues is a concern. Collins is mismanaged and misused, and so that's a concern. So that'll be one of my hangups if there's not some sort of provision allowed for people to park to get off of the sidewalk if they're gonna service that site.
We could put in the equipment area, usually it's big enough, we could make the gate so that when they open it, they can drive in and park inside the enclosure. If that would ease your mind.
Yeah, I mean, I guess initially it would. I don't know how other commissioners would feel about that, but that would be certainly somehow.
It looks to me from the proposed picture that's presented in the packet that gate is sufficient to drive into as it's proposed, so. I personally don't see that as an issue. I mean, beyond anything else that could come up, but that's my opinion. Other questions from the commissioners for?
Yes, I was
Ms.
wondering,
Peabody?
being not an electrical engineer, knowing very little about it, technology, you know, there's a new state office building going right across the street or within that vicinity. I don't know if it's exactly across the street. Will this in any way interfere with any electronic gear, either in the high school or?
No.
And I'll tell you why I asked that, because when they build those motels out on Hatch 6, and the K2 was out there, K2 radio, although I know that's a different thing, those towers, all those hotels were getting K2 radio on the TVs and everything else.
Right, so the spectrum that we use is licensed to Verizon. So they are supposed to be the only ones that are actually using that spectrum.
So there won't be any interference in the neighborhood or anything like that?
And it's written in the lease that if there is a problem with interference, that Verizon will take care of that. So,
And when you thinking about constructing this, is it this summer or?
well, I have hopes that they can get it done this summer, but they have to get the building permit first, and they have to complete some testing process, so it may not be until next summer. But in general, we don't do construction at schools during school year. It's not safe. It's not a good idea.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Peabody from
Just have one question.
Commissioner Davis?
At this point in time, does Verizon have any obligations to any other user to lease part of the facility to them?
At this time, we do not, that I know of, have any indication that we will be having any, usually what they call that is co-location. And as I said, there's not room for additional antennas on the proposed tower that we are proposing, because there are additional lights. So before another user, say AT&T or Sprint or something, came in, they would have to go through this whole process like we are to put it on an additional field light.
Okay.
Was that the question? Did I answer it? Yeah, okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Peabody. As required by state law, we will invite people to comment in favor of or in opposition to all public hearings. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak either in favor of or in opposition to case number PLN 19-7S? Seeing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. I would remind the commissioners that the staff's recommendation is that we review the site plan, considering each of the listed requirements in staff's report, and make a final finding of compliance for each, or as an alternative, a condition of approval that would ensure compliance with all of the city's requirements. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve, or to approve with conditions, to deny, or to table the site plan as proposed.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Winger.
to approve with the conditions that the staff put in.
Okay, and that would, the condition would be summarized, it would be ensure compliance with all of the city requirements, is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Somebody else has some conditions.
Okay. Is there a second to Commissioner Winger's motion?
I second that motion.
Second is by Commissioner Frank. Discussion? Hearing none, please, Commissioner
I would again, I guess, based on what I see, I have kids that are going to be coming up and going to Trona County High School. We're also people who use the sidewalks and walk, and I see this on a regular basis. I feel like having an operator on that gate and a driveway, a parking spot for them to get off. They're going to park on the sidewalk if there's not access into that gate. That's what's going to happen. You can't park on the street there. As it exists, one of those gates will drive straight into the shed. I'm assuming that shed's moving. But I guess that's my feeling.
Okay. Further comments or discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With the exception of Commissioner Ani, who voted nay, all other commissioners vote aye, and the motion passes.
The second item in our public hearings section is PLN 1912R. I would advise the applicant to not only this application but the others that it takes 4 affirmative votes to carry any motion, not just a majority of the commission members present. Anything less than 4 votes is considered a denial. The applicants can postpone their public hearing until next month in anticipation of more planning commissioners being present if they so desire. PLN 1912R is a petition to vacate and replat Lot 27 of the Keystone Edition and to plat a portion of the northwest quarter or the northeast quarter of Section 3, Township 33 North, Range 79 West, 6 p.m. as Fleming Edition, comprising 16,008 square feet, more or less, located at 801 Jane Street, the applicant being Greg D. Fleming. Do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Greg Fleming has applied for a replat of his property located at 801 Jane Street, generally north of Interstate 25 and southeast of the North Casper baseball fields. The subject property consists of Lot 27 of the Keystone Edition, as well as an unplatted parcel directly to the north. The proposed plat is creating a single lot, approximately 16,008 square feet in area, on which the applicant plans to construct a commercial or industrial building. Access to the property is via Jane Street, which is fully constructed to city standards. The property is zoned C4 highway business, and there are no minimum lot sizes in the C4 district. Staff has not included any suggested conditions of approval. However, should the Planning and Zoning Commission wish, conditions may be included in the Commission's recommendation for Council's consideration. Staff did not receive any comments on this case. Mr. Chairman, I have six exhibits. A is the replat application. B, vicinity map. C, copy of the plat. D, legal notice. E, notice of public hearing sent to property owners within 300 feet. And F, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That concludes staff's report on this item.
Thank you. Exhibits A through F are accepted for the record. I now declare the public hearing open for consideration of case PLN 1912R. The hearing again will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and other applicable laws. I would again ask those individuals who address the commission to approach the lectern, identify yourself, and please state your address. Would the person or persons representing case PLN 1912R come forward and explain the application?
I'm Greg Fleming of 111 South Minnesota.
Okay,
This thing joined together so I can put up a building. That's what I mean.
okay, is there any questions from the commission for Mr. Fleming?
I couldn't hear his comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I need to just get these two pieces of property joined together so that I can put up a building.
Okay, that's concise. Any questions, other questions for Mr. Fleming from the commission?
What's the plan with the building?
Put up a shop slash warehouse. More storage facility slash warehouse.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fleming. As required by state law, we invite people to comment in favor of or in opposition to all public hearings. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak either in favor of or in opposition to case PLN 1912R? You can go ahead and be seated, Mr. Fleming. Seeing none, I now declare the public hearing closed and entertain a motion to approve and forward a due pass recommendation to City Council to deny or to table case PLN 1912R, the replat.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Frank.
I move to approve case PLN 1912R and move and forward to council for approval.
I'll be happy to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion by Ms. Frank, seconded by Commissioner Wingeter. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I can see, I think it improves the area, really. Does nothing but improve the area.
Based on what I've seen, I think that's correct. I would support that. Further comments? Seeing none, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Before I would move ahead, I would also make a note that Councilman Bates has joined us too, so thank you, Councilman Bates. Our third item tonight is PLN 1913R. Again, I would advise the applicant that it takes 4 affirmative votes to carry any motion, not just a majority of the commissioners present. Anything less than 4 votes is considered a denial, and the applicants can postpone their public hearing until next month in anticipation of full commission attendance if they so desire. PLN 1913R is a petition to vacate and replat lots 1, 2, 18, and 19, and a portion of lots 20, 21, and 22, Sunrise Hills Number 3 Edition as the Irwin Edition, comprising 4.63 acres, more or less generally located at the southeast corner of South Poplar Street and Southeast Wyoming Boulevard intersection. The applicant being High Plains Investments, LLC. Do we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. High Plains Investments, LLC has applied for a replat of multiple lots in the Sunrise Hills Number 3 Edition, totaling 4.63 acres, located at the southeast corner of the intersection of Poplar and Wyoming Boulevard. The replat is creating 2 newly configured lots to be known as the Irwin Edition. The property is zoned C2 General Business, and there are no minimum lot sizes in the C2 district. Both proposed lots are corner lots, and the adjacent streets are fully constructed to city standards. The replat is vacating an undeveloped portion of Goodstein Drive, as well as realigning previously established utility easements. Staff has included a suggested condition that would require the applicant to provide the necessary sign-offs from all utility companies agreeing to release their easements prior to the replat being placed on the council's agenda. Mr. Chairman, I have 6 exhibits. A is the replat application, B, vicinity map, C, copy of the plat, D, legal notice, E, notice of public hearing sent to property owners within 300 feet, F, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I forgot to mention that we did not receive any public comments on this case. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Exhibits A through F are accepted for the record. Again, I would note to the commissioners as we review the application that there is a condition recommended by staff for our consideration. Would the person or persons representing case PLN 1913R please come forward and explain the application?
Good evening. Bill Faringer with CEPI, 6080 Enterprise Drive. Coming forward to represent this for the owners. The staff report pretty much said everything that needs to be said about this. The one condition of getting the other utility companies to approve the vacation of an existing easement through there is not a problem, and that is in the process.
Good.
Sending that out to the utility companies, and we should start getting them back. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions from Mr. Farringer from the commission?
All right, well,
Commissioner On.
how does access work to these properties, assuming there would be businesses built on those locations?
Well, you'll see that the east side has got frontage on Tranquility Way, and so that is, we could get access off of that. The west lot has got, access to Poplar Street. There's a 30-foot wide access and utility easement along the south line, and so that would allow traffic to move back and forth from Tranquility to Poplar. There's YDOT has approved an access onto Poplar at that location.
Okay.
Further questions from the commission, from Mr. Farringer? Commissioner Davis.
What's your curb cuts? Have you had in place those yet?
No, not at this time yet. Once
Is
it's,
access going to be off of Poplar Street or will be off of Wyoming Boulevard?
there will be no access off of Wyoming Boulevard.
So then it'll be off of Poplar, is that correct?
The one access, there is one access, like I said, that's already been approved, or previously been approved for an access onto Poplar Street. And then there would be access to Tranquility Way also. Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
As required by state law, we will invite people to comment in favor of or in opposition to all public hearings. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak either in favor of or in opposition to case PLN 1913R? Seeing none, I now declare the public hearing closed and would entertain a motion to approve and forward a due pass recommendation to the City Council to deny or to table case PLN 1913R, the replat.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve PLN 19013-R and move it on to the City Council.
Okay, and would that recommendation include the condition that is proposed by staff?
Yes,
Thank you.
forgot about that.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Ronnie. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, my only concern was answered already about possible curb cuts. That's all. I had it written down. I was going to ask that, but it's been asked, so that's all I need to know.
Okay. Further comments? Discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Okay, the fourth item on our agenda for public hearings is PLN 1914C. Once again, I'd advise the applicant that it takes 4 affirmative votes of the commission to carry any motion, not just a simple majority of the members present. And anything less than 4 votes would be a denial. The applicants can postpone their public hearing until next month or a future date in anticipation of more planning commission members being present if they so desire. PLN 1914C is a petition for a conditional use permit to construct a detached garage on lots contiguous and adjacent to the lot upon which the principal building is located on lots 29, 30, 31, 32, 33 of Block 6, North Casper Edition, located at 1175 North Washington Street. The applicant being Warren Scott Gamble and Laura Ann Gamble. Does they have a staff report, please?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Warren and Laura Gamble have applied for a conditional use permit to construct a detached garage on lots contiguous with and adjacent to their residence located at 1175 North Washington Street. The property consists of 5 individual platted lots zoned R3, which is 1 to 4 unit residential. The home is situated on lots 29, 30, and 31, and the proposed garage would be located on lots 32 and 33. To the best of staff's knowledge, there have not been any similar conditional use permits for accessory buildings on separate lots applied for or approved within the surrounding area. Section 1712-121H of the municipal code states that where multiple lots of record have continuous frontage and are under single ownership, detached garages and or accessory buildings may be constructed on a separate lot which is adjacent to and contiguous to the lot which the principal building is located, subject to all other requirements of the section and after approval of a conditional use permit. The intent of this requirement is to ensure that garages are not conveyed separately from the principal dwelling. Detached accessory buildings, by definition, must always be associated with a residence and are not permitted as a standalone structure. Should a conditional use permit be approved by the commission, a deed restriction agreement must be executed and recorded in order to formally tie the lots together as a single unit. In this case, Mr. Chairman, staff has got 2 recommended conditions of approval. The second one I'm going to tweak a little or clarify, not changing the substance really of the condition. Number 1, first condition staff is recommending is pursuant to section 1712-240I of the municipal code, the conditional use permit must be exercised and all conditions met within 1 year of the date of approval or the conditional use permit becomes null and void. And the second condition is going to read as amended, prior to the construction of the garage, the applicant and the city must execute a deed restriction agreement in a form acceptable to the city, which shall be recorded at the Natrona County Clerk's Office at the applicant's sole cost. So the parts that have been added are form acceptable to the city and the recording fees are going to be borne by the applicant. Mr. Chairman, I have received 1 letter of opposition to this conditional use permit, and staff has 6 exhibits to enter. A is the conditional use permit application. B, map of the 300-foot notification zone. C, legal notice sent to the Star Tribune. D, notice of public hearing sent to property owners within 300 feet. E, letter of opposition from Angela Adams, 1137 North Elma Street. And F, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Exhibits A through F are accepted for the record. I now declare the public hearing open for consideration of case PLN 1914C. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and other applicable state laws. Any other applicable laws, period. I would ask those individuals who address the commission to approach the lectern. Please identify yourself and state your address. Would the person or persons representing case number PLN 1914C please come forward as you are and explain the application.
Good evening. My name's Scott Gamble. I live at 1175 North Washington, and I'm applying to build a detached garage. Originally, when we built the house, it was going to have the garage attached to that, but there's a main sewer line that runs through the middle of the property, and because of the city's easements, I can't build over the top of it. So that is why I'm asking to build a detached garage on my property.
Okay, and yeah, and the diagram that we're looking at, I think, answers my question. In that the garage would be immediately south of your house, is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Questions for Mr. Gamble from the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I
Commissioner
have a
Davis.
question to ask you. Your petition calls for a shop, but you only plan to construct a residential garage?
Just a garage.
Is that correct?
Yeah, to put in a boat,
And the documents would state that a residential garage.
yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Commissioner Wingeter.
Yes, sir, I was wondering, in this letter of opposition, it says something about a path that people like to use, and could you explain that? And the alley behind you, that's, of course, a public alley, isn't it?
Correct. Looking at, on the north side of my house, there's 3 more city lots that are owned by the city for building. There has been a path that goes from Elma to Jackson, which is not a road. It's not marked on any city maps or any kind as a road. The right-hand side on the east, Imitate the Image Church owns the property clear into the edge of the water. People have been driving down that road for quite a long time, and what she's complaining about is the city has come in and cut off access to the private property where the garbage trucks have been coming across to also. So now you just come up the alley and you come to the north of my house. The lady lives over on the other street. It is a common way, but people ride with bikes on it, they run cars down it, they walk on it. There's never been any restriction on my part from that.
Okay. So the alley, naturally, anybody can use the alley. Yeah, naturally, and so, and as far as, now, also, I don't know if I should be quoting the letter, I'm not gonna quote it, but, it says something about you or somebody's running around taking a lot of pictures of neighbor.
That's all false. I have not done any of that.
Okay.
She claims that we've been going around taking pictures of their yards and so forth, and I have no idea what she's even talking about.
Mr. Gamble, just to make sure we're all on the same page, the exhibit that we're looking at now, which shows the 5 lots, your house, which has been completed, is am I correct that it's on the top 3 or the
Yes.
north 3 lots, and your proposed garage would take up the southern 2 lots that are on that image that we're looking at right now? So, well, I was just going to say that what appears on the image as a tree is actually, their house is there now if you.
Yeah, I had to cut the trees down, which I didn't want to do, but I didn't have a choice.
All right, so
And
just,
I looked at moving the sewer line with Andrew and Hunt. They came down and gave me an estimate to move the sewer line so I could build over the top of that, and it was $70,000 to move the sewer. I couldn't do that.
further questions for Mr. Gamble from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner
So
Alden?
I noticed that already construction has begun.
I was given verbal permission to start, and then we had an issue with those 2 lots being separate of what the residents on, and I have talked with Mr. Collins extensively about that, and they gave me verbal permission to pour the concrete, so I didn't know I was going to run into this problem, so everything had been stopped from what they had said. And we're trying to tie the 5 lots together, as my understanding. That's the only snag in the whole thing, is tying the 5 lots together.
But that's not what we're doing here, is it?
No.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to mention, the applicant is correct. He has, in good faith, done what he's been told to do. There's been a somewhat of a confusion by several of the staff members as to how to handle this case, and we had two ways it could be handled. One was the conditional use, and the second one was to replat the property as a single lot. So, but once I became aware of the confusion that was going on, and the applicant was told 2 different things by 2 different people, we stopped the construction and brought him in and came up with a solution.
Okay.
So it really wasn't sorry, Mr. Chairman, it really wasn't the applicant's fault.
As far as,
He started.
as far as the start of
Well,
construction, that's
Did
correct.
mean well.
Yeah, he was working in good faith.
Commissioner Davis, you had a question?
Mr. Chairman, sir, the architectural design of the garage that you're going to build, is that going to be the same style as the house that you built?
Yes, same type of siding,
The same architectural style?
shingles, everything.
Further questions for Mr. Gamble?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Frank?
well, actually, I have a question for staff, so I don't have any questions for Mr. Gamble.
Well, go for it.
Oh, my question is, so we have 5 lots right now, and this is a conditional use permit. So we're not changing the 5 lots. There's still going to be 5 lots.
Correct.
And then the agreement is that if he sells the house and the garage, they have to be sold as one unit.
Correct.
But if everything burned down, he could sell each lot separately then?
Correct. I believe the way that the agreement is written is that if the garage were to go away, for instance, and the property were back into compliance, then they could be sold individually again.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Wingeter?
somewhere in here, it says something about a shop. The difference between a garage and a shop, you're not actually, it's just a garage. Just a garage, and you might put a shop table in it or something like that.
I've got a couple of saws and,
So you're not gonna be,
no.
there's no business being ran out of it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gamble.
Thank you.
Again, as required by state law, we invite people to comment in favor of or in opposition to all public hearings. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak either in favor of or in opposition to case PLN 1914C, the proposed conditional use permit?
I'm hoping most of you know me, but Ken Bates with State Council. My address is 209 Indian Paintbrush. I've been actually asked about this whole situation by a few of the neighbors there, I guess approached, just out of the blue. And I can say that a few of them are very much against it, and the reason why is because by building it, it is cutting off that section that people did have access. And I guess that, and this is coming from people, not me, so I'm just speaking for them, that they mentioned a while ago firefighters had to come in there, or the fire department had to come down that street to do something, and trying to get out of that, because yes, city council blocked it off because a fence or whatever was supposed to go up to partially block it off. But anyways, for them to get in and out of that was, they had to jig-jog out of that, according to a couple of the other neighbors there. They didn't feel that that was right. The garbage trucks are having problems now. So it's becoming an issue with some of the other residents around there, that they don't feel that it's fair or right. So I just was bringing that to you guys, not that I'm opposed to it or for it. I just wanted to bring what a couple of the neighbors there have brought to me.
Okay, Councilman Bates, and perhaps you or Mr. Gamble could address this issue. The presence or lack of presence of the garage, the proposed garage, I'm having trouble seeing how that would be influencing egress of a firefighter, or a fire truck, or some other vehicle. I mean, it seems to me if he owns this property, he's got the right to, within certain conditions, to block it off and to keep any access going across there if he indeed owns it. So I'm having trouble reconciling how the presence or absence of a garage would impact the neighbors in terms of their ability to go across the,
I think they're, I'm guessing, I'm assuming, so please take that as that.
understood.
By them saying no, because it's on the north, further north, it, maybe a move in the fence or something, I don't know. They just said that they're not for it, and they brought it to me. I'm here.
Okay.
If I wasn't here, I wouldn't have brought it up to you, but I just wanted to make it clear. That's what they asked, is they just said, by moving the shop there, and yes, it's his property, moving the fence, it cuts off more, it causes problems for the city. And I guess maybe themselves, I'm not exactly sure on that, but they're just, several neighbors just was like hoping by saying no, maybe it'll open it back up, so.
Mr. Chairman, I
I'd
think
ask staff if they have any input or thoughts on that issue.
the councilman's correct that the neighbors perceive the garage and the closure of the alley and the pathway to be interrelated. Really, they're not. The problem, this is probably the best picture I have to sort of show what's going on, but at the upper left-hand corner of the yellow lot extends a little bit into that pathway. That's a city-owned lot where that pathway is located. My understanding is the applicant has asked for closure of that pathway because his property is impacted by the pathway. The pathway crosses his lot. So the city council's been wrestling with that. The timing of the garage is unfortunate in that it's being caught up with that discussion, and really they're separate issues.
Was my question, just for clarification. They're indeed two separate issues in the.
Yeah, they're separate issues, and I believe the issue with the fire truck is because rather than going around having a way out to egress out of there, now it's a dead end because they can't egress out using that city-owned pathway anymore because that area's been blocked off. So, again, it's not related, it's a separate issue, but the neighbors perceive it all to be one and the same because of the timing, I believe.
That's what I perceive,
Okay.
so, and they just approached. So.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Councilman Bates from the commission?
So, and the neighbors asked you to come but they couldn't come to the meeting to talk about this?
They brought it up to me, and while you guys were talking about it, I was here, so I just thought
Okay.
I'd speak for them since I am here. I know one of them is out of town due to a death, so no, that one couldn't. The other one, I don't have an answer for you. I just, like I said, me personally, I'm not opposed or for at all. I was just.
So the issue has to do more with the 3 lots where the house is located rather than the 2 lots where the garage is going to be located. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the house is already there, so short of us suggesting he tear the house down, which seems a bit over.
That the house is built.
So, okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay, thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Winger.
Councilman, without putting you on the spot, you say not for it or against it, but doesn't this go to the city council? Oh, this does not go to the city council
It's conditional use.
because it's conditional use, okay, that's what, I got my question asked. I was gonna say, if it goes before the city council, you've got to vote one way or the other anyway, but it doesn't go to the city council.
Well, and just for clarification, and correct me if I'm wrong, staff, if we were to deny the application, the applicant would have the right to take it to city council, to take it to a higher court, if you may. But if we approve it, then it would be approved at our level.
It cuts both ways, Mr. Chairman. It could be appealed by a aggrieved party on either side.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. So, yeah.
Good.
I think so. Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to speak either in favor of or in opposition to case PLN 1914C? Hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed and would remind the commissioners that the staff report included 2 reasons, 6 findings, and 2 conditions. So please take that into consideration if we were to move ahead with the motion. And I would entertain a motion to approve, to deny, to table case PLN 1914C, or to approve with conditions.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Davis.
I would move that we approve subject to the conditions outlined by staff for PLN-19-014-C. Forward to, since it doesn't have to go to the city council, that would be
approval.
take care of it here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Motion by Commissioner Davis. Is there a second?
I would second that motion.
Second by Commissioner Frank. Discussion, and I see Mr. Tremeth has a comment.
Mr. Chairman, there's been no discussion of the reasons and findings in that motion that must be adopted in order to approve a conditional use permit. So I would just ask Mr. Davis if he would like to amend his motion to include the reasons and the conditions in his motion.
Okay, and as a reminder, staff had in their
Yes, the motion would include the findings 1 through F, or A through F.
2 reasons and the 6 findings as presented in the staff report. Am I reading that right?
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Thank you, Mr.
Further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the public hearings that were on our agenda. I would invite our council liaison, Councilman Hopkins, to come forward and let us know if there's any city council issues that you'd like to communicate with us or actions that you'd like to share with us.
Thank you. Bob Hopkins, 405 South Beach. The council